Sometimes the best stories in golf aren't found on tour. You'll find them at the back of the range. And here's your host, Ben Adelberg.
And once again, welcome to the Back of the Range Golf Podcast. I am your host, Ben Adelberg. This is episode 145. It's been a busy week for me with some non-back of the range stuff to take care of, so I know that this episode is a little bit late this week. I'm sure you were wondering if there would be an episode this week, but come on. You know I always find a way to get you a new episode. Looks like we do have the Travelers Championship this weekend to look forward to, despite more positive COVID cases popping up. I've said many times before, I'll say it again, please stay safe, wash your hands, be smart and considerate of everyone around you, and stay healthy. Just a couple housekeeping items to get through, thanks to everyone that has already entered the FootJoy giveaway contest. As you may or may not know, FootJoy generously kicked in some kicks to give away this week, the new Pro SLs. That contest ended on June 26th at 5 p.m. Eastern. So you probably are too late to enter, but if not, get in there right away. Send me a DM on social media or send me an email, ben@thebackoftherange.com, and you will be entered in the chance to win a new pair of FootJoys. The announcement of the winner will be made on all of the social media platforms. You know that we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And as always, feedback is encouraged. Reviews in Apple Podcasts are encouraged. And if you need to get caught up on any of the previous episodes, go to the website, thebackoftherange.com. So this week really started off great. The mojo was once again real as it relates to success finding its way to guests of this podcast. I mean, we've been on kind of a heater lately. Alex Smalley Monday qualified into the first Korn Ferry Tour event since the suspension. Chase Johnson Mondayed into the St. Augustine Korn Ferry Tour event and made the cut. Davis Riley, Will Zalatoris, they're racking up top tens left and right. Brad Tilley made it to the semis of the Connecticut State Amateur. My guys Sahith Theegala and Peter Quest, they got into the Travelers and are making their PGA Tour professional debuts as we speak. And then Chase Koepka, he Mondayed into the Travelers to play alongside Brooks in a PGA Tour event, and I had the perfect guest for this week to tie it all together, and then this damn coronavirus just pissed in my pool of happiness. Thankfully, at the time I'm recording this intro, they are both healthy. They've withdrawn, obviously, from the Travelers Championship just to be safe and considerate of the field. So Brooks and Chase are dealing with a little bit of adversity right now. Nothing new for them, really. I mean, sure, Brooks has won 4 majors. He's a former number 1 player in the world. And while Chase isn't quite yet a full-time member of the PGA Tour, it looks like he is trending in the right direction. But like I said, it wasn't always like that. The Koepka boys grew up here in South Florida, just up the street from me. And if you think they spent all of their time around private coaching and glitzy country clubs, well, you would be wrong. In fact, Sherbrooke, the club where they played quite a bit of their golf, that course closed down not long after the clubhouse burnt down. Well, they started with cut-down clubs with simple instructions just to hit the ball as hard as they could. They were eventually guided through junior golf programs through the Palm Beach County Golf Association and the Florida Junior Tour. And that eventually led them to FSU and USF, respectively. Along the way, they've met coaches, mentors, teammates, rivals, and even a couple legends like Bob Toski and Tony Jacklin to impart some words of wisdom. But the man that's been there for the entire journey, well, that's this week's guest. My guest on this week's episode of The Back of the Range is Bob Koepka, the father of Brooks and Chase. I know that I have been saying this quite often, but this episode is another instant classic. And I'll be the first person to admit that I was not driving the bus on this one. You'll notice that I am gladly getting the hell out of the way and letting Bob tell some fantastic stories about raising 2 young boys that had an interest in the game of golf. If you really pay attention, you'll see how random moments in the career of a junior golfer were addressed and identified immediately, and they ended up becoming life lessons that would be applied down the road by professional golfers. This episode has something for everyone, If you're a parent of a junior golfer, tons of great information. If you're wondering how Brooks and Chase ended up playing in Europe to start their professional career, yep, we address that as well. This episode is lengthy because, well, Bob likes to talk. No other way to say it. And I didn't feel like editing anything out. So let's get to it right away. Bob, I know you've been trying to do this for a long time. Thanks so much for joining me here at the back of the range. How are you?
Doing good under these crazy times that we're in, and just happy to be back playing a little bit of golf again, and anxious to get everything back to normalcy.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you joining me. You know, it's today's May 4th. I'm kind of letting listeners know when we record, because things like everyone knows change. They change very quickly and rapidly. You're the father of a 30-year-old now. Brooks just turned 30 a couple days ago. Now, obviously, odd circumstances with coronavirus, so I'm going to give you a pass here. But, maybe you didn't have the most memorable birthday celebration a couple days ago. But can you think back, before we get started with a lot of topics we're going to get to, can you think back to maybe a memorable birthday celebration that you had with Brooks or Chase? Maybe a golf trip or a memorable match or something like that?
Wow. That's interesting. Birthday celebration. He was 30 yesterday on Sunday, so hopefully I'll get with him later this week and we'll celebrate. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head.
Okay.
We were probably at a golf tournament somewhere. That's always seemed to be where we were, on the road, at least always during the holidays.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we'll see if we can. We'll see if one jumps into your head between now and during the span of our conversation. And naturally, most people would think that this episode is just going to veer towards your sons, Brooks and Chase. I know Chase was a recent guest here on the back of the range, and you and I actually got a chance to play golf. I guess that was about a year ago, and we got rained out, and I think I did tell Chase during the episode that we probably had as many beers after we played as the amount of holes we ended up playing before we got rained out. Before we talk about maybe the family history in golf, what's your history in golf? When did you get into the game?
It was funny. My dad really didn't play golf when I was younger. He couldn't afford it, and we found some of his clubs in the garage somewhere, tucked away, and we had a little. We thought it was a all sports field out behind the house. We played football there when we were kids and put up a goalpost, and we played baseball out there. And I can remember, at the time we thought it was a full length field. I get back there now and it's about 25 yards long.
There you go.
But I remember grabbing my dad's sand wedge, and I'm a natural lefty. I do everything left-handed, and I can remember just putting the ball down and trying to hit it left-handed with a right-handed club. My dad said, you need to go to the other side. And so I just, turned around, grabbed the club, and started whacking it. It was fine. And then all of a sudden, when I started hitting some houses, I wasn't allowed to do it anymore. And I kind of got my interest in golf because my uncle Dick Grote, who played Major League Baseball and actually in the NBA as well, opened up a golf course back in 1965. So we would go up there to see my uncle. And I always thought it was cool with the golf course. I just loved to drive the golf carts around when I was, 8, 9, 10 years old. So I would go up and visit he had 3 daughters, and I would go up and hang out with them because I didn't play football. Once baseball was over, I had a little bit of a break. My brother was playing football. So I would go up and hang out there, and I just take my dad's clubs up there and kind of got, thought it was kind of fun and everything. And I did that probably for 3 or 4 summers where I'd get to play for maybe 3 weeks at a time. And then I kind of took it up when I was a senior in college. My uncle Dick would get us as a graduation. Well, actually, it was my Aunt Elsie would get us a graduation present from college, and she'd have Dick order a set of golf clubs for all of us. And so he was with Rawlings at the time, and so I got some H&B power built irons and persimmon woods, and just started playing a little bit, and then moved up to Pennsylvania and would drive over and help my uncle at the golf course, whether it was bartending in the evening or ranging in the morning or getting the golf carts ready. And so I kind of got hooked on golf. didn't really know anyone when I moved up to Pennsylvania. So, met some friends there at the golf course, and that kind of became my hobby. And I did that until I moved down here to Florida.
And you're a pitcher at West Virginia Wesleyan, and I guess like you said, most people don't. I guess most kids didn't play a lot of golf in college. I mean, as just like a hobby. So it was hard for you to find games. I mean, just basically, I'm guessing you found a lot of games at Champion Lakes. That's the golf resort in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, it was kind of funny because I always tell my kids when they were growing up, we didn't look at golf as a sport. When I grew up, I mean, when you went to high school sports banquet and there was a buddy or somebody you knew there, because he was on the men's golf team, we used to laugh, going, "Why is he getting a Letterman's jacket? That's not even a sport."
There you go.
And now it's my hobby and my passion, and both my kids are playing professionally. So it's amazing how your perspective changes over time.
Well, that'll be the headline quote of this episode. Bob Koepka, golf is not a sport. So we'll make sure we advertise it properly. So you moved down to Florida, and obviously, Brooks and Chase get into the game. Now, a lot of parents listen to the podcast, and they're always thinking about, or they're listening to it to maybe get some insight into, how do I put my child in the best situation to play junior golf, to have them enjoy the game. If they end up getting, an opportunity to play in college, that's great. They can get an education. How did you introduce the game to the boys to where it was fun, but also maybe competitive as well?
The key is get involved in a lot of sports early. I grew up in an athletic family, both my mother and my dad's side. I had an older brother that, we were very competitive. And so, one of the first things I remember, in Brooks's case, to give you an example, he didn't like toys. We had a dog, and dog had a racquetball, and he had more fun picking up the ball. And I got him, he was, not even 2 years old. And I got him a little plastic golf set. And the driver was sloped on both sides, so you hit it from right or left. And the iron was like a triangle, same way. You could hit it right or left-handed.
Right.
And had a putter and these 3 hard yellow balls. And he just, would whack it around the yard. And actually started whacking it in the house until it started, going up, getting it airborne and going to break a window or something. I put him out in the backyard. We had a fenced-in backyard, and he would just hit it, and it was kind of like like an ice skating rink from the standpoint. He would hit the wall and, the fence, and he'd just keep chasing around and whacking it.
Right.
That was kind of his first little introduction to it. And I don't know if you recall, but Jack Nicklaus built a par 3 putting course up off North Lake Boulevard. And, you'd ask me about a birthday memory. And I can remember taking Brooks up there for his birthday, and he was like, gosh, I want to say 3 years old. And he had posters up on the wall of, Ian Woosman, Greg Norman, Paul Azinger, and trying to figure out, what do I do for his birthday? Well, he loved watching golf on TV. He would get the clicker, and he'd turn it right on to, wherever there was golf, and he would just sit there, just glued watching the TV. And he picked up the names from the broadcaster, because when we went up to that putting course, we walk in and he's pointing to the poster on the wall and going, Shark, Woozy, Zinger. And the guy's like, he actually knows these guys? And I was like, yeah. And so we went out, and I remember going around there and putting and everything and just enjoying it. I think that was kind of his, introductions to golf. Was I would take him down to the club and just let him hit a few on the range. I cut down some of my little, my old clubs, and had no intention of my, kid going on to play at a higher level. It was just he and I spending some quality time together. And as he got, I'd say when he was, 6 or 7, maybe even, a little bit younger than that, my wife Sherry would bring him down to the golf course to watch me play in the match play championship or the club championship. And, after we were done, we'd have lunch, and then I'd take him out to the range, and I'd tee up balls for him. It didn't matter whether he was hitting a driver or an iron, an 8-iron. I teed him up. And the idea was to just to see him have fun out there. Every kid wants to be like their dad.
Yeah.
Whatever their dad does, they want to do. And my whole theory was I want him to enjoy the game. And I see so many people out there thinking, oh, I'll just put the ball on the ground and my kid will go up and just whack it. Well, I played a lot of sports in my day and I've got some pretty good hand-eye coordination. I thought hitting a curveball was hard in baseball, but the ball just sitting there on the ground, it'd be easy to hit it until you take up the game. And you don't want to see them get frustrated, because if a young child gets frustrated, they're going to go do something else.
Sure.
Because, when they're little, they have an ego just like we do as adults. And I remember teeing it up and Brooks would whack it. It'd go way off to the right or way off to the left. He didn't care what direction it went. He was like, wow, did you see how far that went?
There you go.
And I did the same thing with Chase.
Yeah.
And the idea was swing hard at it, hit it, as hard as you can. And when they see it going a long ways, they're like, wow, let's keep doing this. So I would just sit there on the tee box and just keep teeing them up. And, when they got enough hand-eye coordination, I'd start sneaking the tee down a little bit with the irons. And, all of a sudden they wouldn't even know the tee wasn't there anymore and they were hitting it off the ground because they had developed enough hand-eye coordination to make solid contact. And that's kind of how I got them started.
Interesting. How did you balance the let's keep it fun and then also incorporate, okay, we got to get a little bit of fundamentals in here, maybe, tinker with a grip or how did you go from let's keep it fun to, all right, let's get you the proper education on how to do this the correct way so you can keep enjoying the game as you get better?
Well, I taught myself how to play. I always said I don't know if I did things the right way or not, but I just did it however I knew how to do it. And so I could help them with the basics somewhat and give them a decent grip and, a decent alignment and everything, but it might not have been the ideal one. So in the beginning, it was just about us just going out there. And sometimes it was just my wife and I and the kids going out and playing a scramble or, just trying to have some fun. But, as they get older and as they get better, their competitive juices kick in. And I think as a parent, you do what your parents did. And my parents never let my brother and I win at anything. We started playing cards when we were, 3 years old, a game called Building on the Sevens. And that's how we learned how to count and learned to identify suits. And they never let my brother and I win. And, of course, we'd run to our room crying, and my dad would say, come on, get back out here. And, if you want to win, you better figure out a way. And so I did the same thing with my kids. And, I used to have a lot of people say, oh, you're tough on your kids, or, aren't you worried about their feelings, or, they never let them win. And I'm like, well, I'm trying to get them prepared for the real world. And the real world's not going to let them win. They have to figure out a way. And so that was the whole idea was, kids knew when we went out to play, I was going to beat them and I wasn't going to let up on them. And, they wanted to beat me. They had to work hard at it. And, they both, took that attitude of, I want to beat my dad. And, they went out and worked at it. And I think, whether you're playing against your dad or you're playing against other kids, they had such a huge advantage because I never let them win. That they were more mature at whatever sport they were playing than a lot of the other kids their age, because those kids were always allowed to win and they were just expected to win. But, the other kids weren't going to hand it to them.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you about this, about hard work. That's probably something that the average fan, they don't necessarily see that. They see the golfers on TV. They see the trophies at the end and the nice endorsement deals and all the fancy clubs and clothes and all that lifestyle, but they don't see all the work that goes into it. I'm wondering, when did you first start seeing how hard they actually worked at it? Not so much the talent level, but just like, oh, okay, they're getting beat. They are then going back and working at it even harder. Like, this is going to be a thing with them. They're going to work at this. They're going to make it.
It happens typically when they're in their early teens.
Okay.
When they were younger, they practiced for a little bit. Like the first time Brooks ever played in the tournament, he was 7 years old. We heard about a little 9-hole tournament up at Okehele Park. Put him in it. So I actually bought him a junior set where it had every other iron, and so he could play in those tournaments because he just had 5 or 6 clubs that were cut down for me, and so put him out there, and he enjoyed it and was competitive. I mean, I think he came in like 3rd place in a 9-hole tournament. He's like, I'd like to do this again. And at the time, he was playing baseball, which I'm encouraging people to play other sports because your kid will migrate to whatever sport it is that they like.
Sure.
Don't force them into it, because if you as a parent force your kid to play a certain sport because you want them to play it and they don't, it won't be successful. It was a sport, Brooks liked them all. He liked baseball, and Chase did before really golf. Golf was just kind of something that was, okay, let me do that because there's an event and I can go play in it. It was just a situation where when they got out there, they had some success. It was just fun. And that's the way I wanted it to be. And it continued that way until Brooks was 12 and he decided he was going to give up baseball and he wanted to focus on golf. And at the time, he might go over for a half hour, 45 minutes and hit balls, then want to go play. But when he became a teenager, all of a sudden he wanted to go to the course and he'd be at the range for 3 and 4 hours, beating balls. And we had moved down to the golf course so that they could just walk over the range whenever they wanted to. And I can remember Brooks, I think he was 13 or 14, and Chase was probably 10. And Brooks would come home after practicing all day, and he's like, I don't think Chase is going to make it in golf, Dad. And I was like, why is that, Brooks? He said, because, he comes over and hits balls for 45 minutes. Then he wants to go over to his friend's house and play video games. And he says, he's not willing to put in all the work. And I said, Brooks, when you were 10, you did the same thing. Don't forget it. I said, I guarantee you when he's your age, he'll probably be out here doing the same thing. And it was funny because as Brooks, went off to college and everything, now Chase is in his early teens. And guess who was on the range all day?
There you
go.
It was
Chase.
Yeah.
So in their teenage years is when they'll do that, because at that time they both thought golf's going to be my sport, and I never had to ask them to go practice. They always wanted to go. I can relate one story to you. There was a girl that was kind of chasing after Brooks, and gosh, he might have been 15 at the time. I think she was like 14, and she lived about an hour north. And, so if he was going to go see her, I had to drive him an hour north, drop him off, drive an hour south, do, whatever I was doing. Then later in the day, go pick him up. So I'm spending 4 hours on the road, which, what wasn't fun on my part.
Yeah.
And I can remember one Saturday I was in the office, and Brooks said to me, he said, Dad, I'm going to go over and practice a little bit. You want to come over and watch, and then we'll play afterwards. And I said, well, look, I've got about an hour or two of work. And I said, after that, I'll, be happy to, come over. And I hear his cell phone ring, and his bedroom was right across from my office. And I can hear he's talking to this girl on the phone, and she wanted him to come up and spend the day with her. And he was like, well, I was planning on going over and hitting some balls. And she was trying to convince him to come up and everything. And I could hear, some back and forth, didn't know what exactly was going on. And So he hangs up the phone and he comes walking into my office and says, Dad, so-and-so wants me to, come up and spend the day with her. And I said, okay. And he's like, but I was thinking I really want to go over and practice. And he said, what do you think I should do? And my response was a simple one. What do you want to do, son? And he says, well, I really want to go practice. And I said, well, there's your answer. And I heard him go back into his room, gets on the phone and tells her, sorry, I can't come up. I'm going to go practice. And he hangs up the phone, walks into my office and says, Dad, I'm going over to the range to practice. I said, okay, I'll see you in about an hour and a half. And he didn't see the reaction, but I think I'm fist pumping as he's going down the hallway, to get his clubs. And, because if I had told him that he needed to go practice, he probably would have said, Dad, will you drive me north?
Right.
To go here.
Typical kid.
It had to be his decision, not mine.
Right.
And, he was dedicated because, he always said, I've got a tournament coming up in 2 or 3 weeks. I need to get better. And, the only way he was going to get better was, to go and practice.
It's funny you're talking about these tournaments. That's a great story too. I can just see you just in your office, just fist pumping, like, yes, he chose golf. Yes, he chose the right decisions. I'm thinking about, you mentioned he's got these tournaments coming up, and I'm a little bit older. I don't think I was playing Palm Beach County events when Chase was coming through, but I find this great picture online, and Brooks went to Cardinal Newman, and I mean there was just an absolute murderer's row of talent on that high school team. I mean, being in the area, Chapel Brown and Robbie White, they went to UF, they were killers. Jude Estacchio, he won the state amateur in 2008, and Eric Downs was in there. I think he went to Flagler. He was a great player, and Brooks is in that mix too. And I'm guessing, and I think Danny and Matt Evelyn, they were probably in there as well. I mean, all these young kids that were just incredible players, and he's in that mix as well. I'm guessing that had a huge influence on his ability, knowing that every day he went out to play these tournaments, whether it's high school or state AMs or county AMs. There's just a lot of great players down here where he had to work at it to get better.
Yeah. And, I'm going to take you back a little bit further. And then I'll address that Cardinal Newman team. But I'll never forget when Brooks first started playing, I said his first tournament was like 7 years old. And, he never won any of those things. And I remember they would always just play 9-hole tournaments, just be a one-day thing, and of course, every kid wants to win. But he was in a position. There was a kid here that was very advanced at a young age named Kenny Leach.
I remember Kenny Leach. I remember
good player. He's a golf teacher now, in Palm Beach County, and still a very good player. But anyways, one day he said to me, he says, "Well, I got to beat Kenny Leach." And I said, "No, you don't." And he's like, "Yeah, I just got to beat Kenny." And I said, "Brooks, you're not playing against Kenny." He said, yeah, he's in the tournament. And I said, "You're playing the golf course. If you beat the golf course, you'll beat Kenny." And, lo and behold, Kenny wins. And there was another kid, he went to Auburn to play. His name was Jack Bindor from up in Vero Beach, left-hander. Really good. Those two were winning every event at Brooks's age group. And we go up to Vero Beach for a 2-day event. And I'll never forget, Brooks has got the lead after the first 9 holes. And you got to remember, every tournament we did was 9 holes. This one's going to be his first 18-hole tournament, 9 each day.
Right.
So Saturday night, we walked down from the hotel we were staying at. There was an ice cream shop along the beach up at Vero. And, we get down there, and there's 5 or 6 of his buddies all went down to get an ice cream. And they are just like, wow, Brooks, he has the 9-hole lead. And so he's just grinning from ear to ear.
Yep.
And just, loving his time there at the ice cream shop with his buddies. And lo and behold, Sunday comes around and they go to play the next 9. And all you can do as a parent is just, walk along and watch. You don't caddy for them. You don't give them any advice or anything. And you could just see it slipping away.
Yeah.
And he ends up in 3rd place. And I'll never forget, he goes into the scorer's tent, signs a scorecard. I'm standing, 50 feet away, and he comes flying out of that scorer's tent, and he's running right at me. So I kind of bend down, and he jumps up, and he wraps his legs and his arms around me and is squeezing so hard, and his head's over my shoulder, and I could just hear him bawling.
Uh-huh.
And I said to him, "Brooks, what are you crying about?" And he's sniffling, and he's,
Yeah.
I lost. And I know. I said, "It hurts, doesn't it?" Yeah. He's still crying and everything. And I said, "Well, let me just tell you something, son. You got to learn to lose before you can learn to win." And the whole idea is, hey, you still got some work to do. And he thought he had it after 9 holes.
Yeah.
And guess what? Those guys were coming after him. That no one was going to let him win. And I think as an athlete, you have to learn to lose first. You have to learn what it feels like. And I said, "This doesn't feel good, does it?" He's like, "No." And I said, "Well, remember this feeling and do whatever you can to make sure that you don't have the same feeling again." And, he continued to work hard. Now, getting back to your conversation about Cardinal Newman,
mm-hmm.
his freshman year, he goes there, and they have 8 kids on the team that can break par. Now, you want to talk about a hard job as a high school golf coach? And Greg Sherman was the coach. And how do you determine who's going to play? You had Jude Estacchio, you had Chapel Brown, Robbie White, you had Danny McClellan, Danny Evelyn, Brett, I can't think of Brett's name, Eric Downs, and Brooks. And Brooks would come home from practice. I'm like, "How'd you do?" And he says, "I played pretty good. I shot 36. Like, "That's great." He's like, "Well, yeah, normally it would be, but it wasn't today." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, there was a 33 and 234s, 235s.
Yeah.
And I was like, "You're kidding me." And they were going to play Bear Lakes, not like it was an easy golf course. So when they started doing qualifying, for their 9-hole matches, the top 5 are going to qualify. And they went out, and I mean to tell you, if you didn't shoot under par, you weren't playing in the match. And they had so much talent. Most of those kids went on to play college golf.
Yeah.
Jude originally went to Florida, ended up going to Florida Southern.
Right.
Dan Evelyn went to Florida Southern. Brett went to Penn. Robbie and Chapel went to Florida. Brooks goes to Florida State. I mean, that might be one of the most talented high school teams, that anybody can recall. I can tell you it was the most talented in this area. There's never been one, close to it. And, these kids went out every day, and, they felt like if they shot 35, that, that probably was going to get them in the next match. So that, they really pushed each other. And, as they went through their high school and college careers, the top amateur golfers around here, all got a taste of it in the county amateurs and all the various county tournaments that Tommy Dillon ran for the Palm Beach County Golf Association.
Yeah, I remember seeing it all the time. I'd go play in the county events, and I I think I was probably, oh gosh, so I'm about 13 years older than Brooks. So yeah, I mean I would go into these tournaments, and I'm just a mid-am, just kind of scraping something around. Maybe I'd shoot a couple of good scores, but I would just see these young kids just walk in there, just not a care in the world, and just kick the shit out of all of us. And I just was like, okay, must be nice. And it's just crazy because I mean, yeah, like I think you've intimated, like, hey, he's not, he was just part of a group of really good junior golfers, but he was not this incredible standout. I know there's a great story, if you can share it, about when Bob Toski took a look at Brooks, and I'm guessing you took a look at Chase as well at some point. When did the relationship with Toski start?
Bob was always over at Sherbrooke, pretty much every day. He would come over around lunchtime, have a bite to eat, and then he would go to the back of the range, and he worked with one of the families there. Would always have him over, and he would just put on a clinic some days, and you'd have 15 people standing around, or he might just be working with one or two of the people back there. And over the years, I got to know Bob quite well, and had many good conversations with him. And Brooks was a junior in college, and they had an assistant coach come in there over the summer because the previous coach was Chris Malloy, who recruited Brooks to Florida State as the assistant, Chris and Trey Jones. And Chris took the job at USF, and he was instrumental in getting Chase to go to USF and to build a program there. And this coach had read books about how Ben Hogan hit a cut shot. He had these guys in the fall. I didn't get to go to any of the fall tournaments. Putting a move on that he thought the way Ben Hogan hit a cut shot, it was not good at all. So Brooks had come home at Christmas break, and he was really not having fun playing golf. For the only time I can ever recall in his years of playing golf that he wasn't enjoying it. And I was mowing the yard in the John Deere tractor. We had an acre right off the 5th tee box, and all of a sudden I see him waving at me. And so I turn the mower off, and I drive it up to the back tee box. And at Sherbrooke, the 5th hole was about a 210 to 215 yard par 3. And Brooks says, "I want to show you this cut shot." So I'm like, "Sure, no problem." And I see him take this swing, and the left elbow chicken wings out, and the hands come up barely over the top of his shoulder.
Right.
And I'm like, "What is that?" And he says, "This is that cut shot that he wants us to hit." And I was like, "Brooks, that is the most unathletic move I have ever seen from you in my whole life." I said, "That is ridiculous." And he said, "Well, that's what he's having us all do." And he said, "I'm just not, happy with this." And I said, "Hold on." I started the mower up. I drove over to the garage, and I grabbed a dozen golf balls. And I said to him, "I'm going to bet you right now you can't get one ball to the green with that swing." And at the time, he was probably hitting I'd say a 4 or 5 iron from that yardage. And he's like, "Well, what happens if I don't?" I said, "Well, you're going to have to do, dishes and, whatever back at the house." And so he cannot get any one of them to the green. I mean, he's coming up 20 yards short. And I said, "All right, here's the deal, son. You're never going to do that again." I said, "I can just go back to when I was a kid growing up." And I said, "And I could tell the difference between an athletic move and not." And I said, "If we were doing a pickup basketball game, you'd be the last kid picked." That's how unathletic that move was.
Wow.
It shows me you have no talent. I said, "Tomorrow," I said, "when you come over to practice, I want Bob Toski to see this." Because Bob played with Ben Hogan, practiced with Ben Hogan, and everything. And I says, "We're going to put an end to this, whatever this thing is." Because I can tell you right now, Ben Hogan didn't hit it that way.
I wish I was there, because just knowing, just for the limited time that I've spent with Bob Toski, he must have been. Go ahead. I just know where this story's going, but go ahead. This is great.
Yeah. So we get over there, and Brooks goes to the range, and he's hitting balls. I go into the grill room, and I see Bob sitting there. And so I go over to Mr. Toski and say, "Hey, do you have, 5 minutes, 10 minutes? I need you to take a look at this." I said, because this coach is telling Brooks how Ben Hogan hit a cut shot and everything. And of course, Toski starts right away going, "Well, I know how Ben hit it."
Yeah.
This and that and everything. I was like, "Great." I said, "Come on, let's go." So I go get Brooks. I said, "Come on, hop in the cart. We're going to the back of the range." So Toski says, "So your dad tells me you're a pretty good player." And he said, you've learned to hit a cut shot like Ben Hogan. He said, do me a favor. I want to see this swing. So, Brooks puts the ball down and he performs this swing. And Toski, he dropped some words that you can't mention right now.
Okay.
There's a lot of four-letter words that were flying out, and he basically said to him, "Kid, don't ever swing like that ever again." He said, "I'm going to tell you right here and now, Hogan never swung like that. He could never hit a golf ball like that. Show me how you hit a cut shot." And Brooks was always a guy that liked to hit a cut shot. So he puts another ball down and says, "Show me a high cut shot." So Brooks hits a high cut shot. He says, "No, show me a medium trajectory cut shot." And so Brooks hits another one. He says, "Show me a low trajectory cut shot." Brooks hits a nice cut shot in there. And, he says, "So tell me, how do you hit a cut shot?" And Brooks says, I set the club face down in the direction, I want the ball to go. And he says, I open my stance. And he said, I swing down my stance line and I let it go. And then I let it just, drop over to the target. And he says, that's exactly the way Hogan did it. And he made Brooks do that. He probably called 10 shots, a high cut, a low one. And then he took the alignment stick, yep, and he put it in the ground and he had it coming out like a stinger. And he's like, I want to see one on that trajectory with a cut. And Brooks did everything that Toski asked him to do. He probably only hit 15 shots. And Toski said, you've got it. Don't ever hit a cut shot anything different than this. And he said, you'll go places. And Brooks was like, he didn't really want to get a lesson on it, but I knew he needed it because I knew he needed to get rid of that swing. And he said, am I done now? And I said, yeah. So he went back to the front of the range, and Mr. Toski looked at me and said, your kid is going to win majors. And I said, you just put an S on the end of that. And he said, yes. He said, the way he hits a golf ball, the way he strikes it, he's going to win majors. And I said, you know what? I had one other friend, Doug Ferrari, that had mentioned that. He was Brooks's middle school coach. Because Brooks had the opportunity to play high school golf as a sixth grader. He and Chase both. And Doug always said, your kid, he's, followed Brooks all the way through high school and into college. And Doug says, I'm telling you what, Bob, he's going to win a major. And he said, he's got it. And he's got the mindset and everything. And so when Toski said that, I was like, you're serious? Because at the time, I'm thinking Brooks is not happy playing golf.
Yeah.
And he's got to get back to, the right mindset. And, at the time, he'd never won a college tournament. He grew up through the Florida Junior Tour, never won a Florida Junior Tour event. And I'm sitting there thinking, you're telling me this kid's going to win majors? He can't even win a college event.
Right. Can't win at this level, but yeah.
Yeah. And, he goes on to win 3 times his senior year. And, he just kept getting better. And, here we are now, 9 years later, and he's got 4 major championships.
You mentioned college. So Brooks goes to FSU, graduates, degree in social science. Chase goes to USF, graduates, degree in marketing. Was there a plan B for them? A lot of, I guess you can think about, if you have a plan B, that means that you are allowing yourself a reason to fail, or you're allowing yourself to fail on your plan A. But I'm just curious, how was education and, obviously completing college was very important. What was your kind of mindset on that, or what was their mindset? Did they have a plan B, or was it just, I'm turning pro?
Well, we got to go back to the 6th grade at Wellington Christian. Okay. Brooks makes the high school team as a 6th grader. And the qualification that Doug put out was, you got to break 45 in order to make the team. So the first day of qualifying, Brooks shoots like 41, makes the team. So he's just, tickled to death with himself. And the first 9-hole match they play, I think Brooks shoots 39. And so he's thinking he's, this hotshot golfer. And, this is a small little school, Wellington Christian. Um, if there were 6 kids that knew how to play golf in the school, they were lucky. So he was pretty full of himself. And I'd say it was about the 3rd or 4th match. We're riding home. Chase is in the 2nd grade, and Brooks, says something from the back seat. Says, I'm thinking maybe in about 4 years I'll just drop out of school and I'll turn pro. And my wife said, if you could have seen the look on your face, I pulled the car immediately off the road and was probably in somebody's yard. And I put it in park and I turned around and I said, you think you're going to drop out of school and turn pro in the 10th grade? I said, you got another thing coming, buddy. I said, you're not that good. I said, you are going to finish high school. You're going to go to college. And if after 4 years you're good enough, then maybe you can turn pro. And I'll fast forward, say, 3 or 4 years later. And Brooks is in the 9th or 10th grade. Brooks was not the academic one. He competes in athletic level, but he didn't compete in the classroom, where Chase was the total opposite. He competed in both. He wanted to, do well in both. And Brooks, we were trying to get him a tutor and stuff, because I'm like, look, if you want to go play college golf, you got to have good grades.
Yeah.
If there's 2 kids they're looking at, you're one of them, and the other kid's got a 3.5 and you've got a 2.5, you're not going there, because he's worried about you staying eligible. And so I was like, we got to get him a tutor and work with him and everything. And, I sat down with him one day and just said, Brooks, you've got to have a backup plan. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, well, you got to have a plan B, because if golf doesn't work out, you've got to have an education to fall back on, so you can go out and get a job or something. And he looked at me just Confused. Serious.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, so serious, and says, Dad, there is no plan B. And I said, son, what if plan A doesn't work? He said, if I have a plan B, plan A will never come into play. And I thought, you know what? That's smart, but I couldn't let him know that I agreed with him.
Right, of course not. Because
then he'd forget about classroom altogether and everything. But I mean, I understand where he was coming from. Is if he's got an out, or to be able to say, well, if it doesn't work out, I'll go do this. That's all he ever wanted to do, and that was his mindset. And so he worked at that. As soon as school was over, he was making a beeline right to the range at Sherbrooke to practice. Or going over to Bear Lakes when it was during the high school season. And when he wasn't doing that, he was going to the gym. I got him a membership at LA Fitness, and he loved that. He would go in there and he'd find some gym rat that was a musclehead that was in there doing all kinds of lifts and stuff. And Brooks would walk over and start asking him what to do, and the guy's like, do this, do that. Get some protein shakes to help. You got to make sure you do this if you want to, get some muscle and everything. And, he still does the same things to this day.
Yeah.
When he practices hard. And when he goes to the gym, he works hard. And Chase is the same way, just at a different level. He doesn't have the body type that Brooks has. And so when he goes to the gym, he can't lift the heavier weights like Brooks. And Brooks had always challenged himself. He would, if you lifted, 200 pounds, he had to lift 210. And, so he was competing in the gym. And I think that's what helped him really get where he's at now. Because, he looked up to DJ, and DJ was his workout buddy. And he saw how hard DJ worked, and, that pushed Brooks to work even harder.
How did the European Challenge Tour come to be? I mean, I know after talking to Chase, a couple episodes previously, he kind of, had an opportunity to get some starts through sponsors exemptions and through some different opportunities, and the timing was good, so that's why he went over to do the Challenge Tour, then eventually play the European Tour. But what started that process of Brooks trying to do that, and were you involved, so to speak, on the early decision making process of helping him and obviously helping Chase with their careers? Like, how do you be the parent but then also help out, or do you need to keep your distance? Like, how's that been as a parent?
I think at that stage, Brooks was a senior in college, and he had agents coming out following him his spring season, and that was when I kind of started thinking, he can make this, he can do this for a living, because I always thought if he could just somehow get out on the PGA Tour and finish 125 on the money list to keep his card the next year, it'd make me the happiest dad. But in his case, we had 5 agents come in to Florida State up in Tallahassee, and he interviewed 5 of them along with his head coach, Trey Jones, and Robert Duck, the assistant, and his mom and his stepmom and I were there, and we were more the bystanders as parents, just to listen to what these agents had to say, because the whole spring they were coming up to me, talking to me all the time, and trying to woo me, thinking if I can win over Dad, I got a shot at the son, and we felt like the coaches knew more about this than we as parents did. So they rely more on the direction with Robert Duck. And Robert's background was he was working as a sports agent in the golf business prior to becoming a college golf coach. And Trey had other people come through there like Jonas Blixt and guys like that. So they knew they had been down this road where we hadn't. So we just sat back, and Brooks ended up deciding to go with Hamburg Sports and Blake Smith. And it was interesting because Brooks had qualified for the U.S. Open at the Olympic Club in May of his senior year. And so they still had nationals and everything. So once college golf was over, he was going to, start his pro career, but he had qualified for that U.S. Open as an amateur because he forgave, or he was ranked top 50, I think, in amateur golf. So that got him into second stage. He got exempt from local qualifying.
Sectional, yeah.
So if he got through at sectionals, then he had to play the tournament as an amateur. So right after that, Brooks was going to prepare for the U.S. Open, and then he thought, you know what, I'm going to take like a week, and he's going to go to Europe. His girlfriend at the time was playing professional soccer in Sweden, and he hadn't seen her for probably, I don't know, maybe 9 months or something like that. So he thought, I'll go over there and watch her play some soccer and kind of take a week to myself, 10 days to myself before I start my grind at professional golf. And Blake said to him, I can get you some starts. If you're heading over to Europe, I can get you some starts over there on the Challenge Tour. So Brooks said, sure. All he wants an opportunity. And it just kind of turned from there. And he got him, a handful of starts. And, next thing you know, Brooks wins one of them and earns status for the next year on the Challenge Tour. And that fall, Q School was going on. And that was the last year you could go straight from Q School to the PGA Tour. So Brooks gave that a run. I caddied for him up in Lakeland at first stage, and he, I think, came in third there, shot like 18 or 19 under, and he decided to go out to McKinney Ranch out in Dallas, Texas for second stage, and he missed by 2 shots. And there was another famous name, Jordan Spieth, that missed by 2 shots. But Jordan had, such a distinguished amateur career and everything. He was able to get starts on the PGA Tour, and, Brooks really didn't have that. So he went back over to Europe and, decided to, spend a year there on the Challenge Tour. And he and Peter Uerlein were pretty much the only American players over there. And
Yeah.
so he and Pete, kind of roomed together on the road, became very good friends. And, lo and behold, I think Brooks was home during March and first part of April. And he had said that Pete had recommended to him, it'd probably be worth getting a caddy. And, in the Challenge Tour back then, you still don't make a lot of money when you win. So to have a caddy, can put you in a financial hole pretty quick. And I remember Brooks was worried about that. He came over to the house, and my wife and I were talking with him, and he thought it could help him a little bit. So we said, "Look, we believe in you. Why don't you not worry about the financial part of it and just focus on golf? And if it can help you one shot around, like Pete says, that's 4 shots over 4 rounds is a lot. That's the difference between coming in maybe 10th and winning. So give it a go. We'll pay for the caddy. You just focus on golf." And he went out at April and May and won 3 times in like 7 events, and got his promotion to the European Tour with his 3rd win up in northern Scotland in some awful golf conditions. And kudos to the organizers of the tournament, because they were going to shorten it to by 1 round because the weather was so bad on Sunday. And the guy that was, I guess, the organizer said, "Look, this kid's got a chance to win a 3rd time. He's only 2 or 3 shots back, and we can't deny him that opportunity, because I think we can get 18 in. It may not be good weather." And he went out there in some of the most god-awful golf conditions and persevered through that and ended up winning by like 3.
Wow.
And he's doing these interviews afterwards, and he sees a plane take off, and he's thinking to himself, "That's my plane." And he had to get down to England for the Monday qualifier for the British Open the very next morning. And, lo and behold, he's got to take a car and drive down to Edinburgh, Scotland, and catch like a 5:30 flight out and get into Heathrow in London, and then catch a ride over to the golf course for like an early tee time for a 36-hole qualifier for the British Open. And by the time he got to the airport, it was, wee hours of the morning, and he basically slept in the gate for about 2 hours, hopped on the plane. His agent had a car waiting for him, picked him up, drove him to Sunnyvale, got there like 15 minutes before his tee time, hit like 3 balls on the range, went out and won the 36-hole qualifier to get his first British Open.
Crazy, these Koepka kids doing the same stuff. I mean, I think Chase told a very similar story about just basically, red eyes and all this, the crazy travel, that Challenge Tour, and just over there, just, it's insane. Just all the connections and all the different countries and currencies, and just, it's incredible. We got into it a lot. It was fascinating to hear Chase talk about just the grind of it all.
Yeah. And I didn't realize how difficult it was. I mean, I can remember some times, and both of them did this, they'd call me up, and, there's a 5-hour time difference. So, it's hard to catch them because, one, you don't know when they're, if they're still at the golf course practicing, or if they're going to sleep in a little bit because they got a later tee time. And, I'd be up I never slept because I'd be up at 2:00 in the morning watching my phone to see the scores updated every 3 holes or whatever it was, and then I'd just lay in bed waiting for the next update 3 holes later. Because, as a parent, you only want the best for your kid. And, all you can do is just, watch and wait for the updates. But, to hear some of the stories from both Brooks and Chase and some of the challenges they went through, and, it's pretty scary for, kid 20, 21, 22 years old, traveling in strange countries, and, people are trying to take advantage of them, whether it's, steal their money, or, who knows what. They both have told me stories about, someone taking them on a ride, and they're like, "I don't think this is where we're supposed to be going." And Brooks said he was one time with a guy, and I think it was India with another player from Europe. They both missed the shuttle because their plane came in late or something. And so this guy pulled off the side of the road, and there was 3 or 4 guys standing outside like a gas station in the pitch dark. And he said they basically, Brooks put his arm around the guy and was choking him and said, "If you don't pull out," he said, "we're going to kick the shit out of you and throw him out of the car and steal our car." And he said, "I was worried for my life."
Right.
Chase told me some of the same things. And, as a parent, you're going, well, I'm glad I didn't know about these things.
Right.
It's fun to laugh about them now, but I'm sure at the time it wasn't funny for them. And like you said, I'm better off not knowing those things, but it toughened them up. Over there, they don't get to play courses in the same condition as what we do over here. And the courses over there, some of them are manicured real well, some aren't. Some are link style versus traditional style. So they've got to learn to adapt to things not only on the golf course, but in the same situations off the golf course, whether it's ordering food or how to try and check into a bed and breakfast when no one speaks the same language. I think it toughened both of them up and made them grow up, pretty quick, and hopefully benefits both of them, throughout their careers. Because over here, the guys just have it much easier. They just come in registration, or they fly in, and there's a rent a car, and everything's just all taken care of, and meals and everything. So definitely much easier to travel over here than it is going from country to country, and being questioned on whether or not you should be allowed into the country.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like how do you how do you balance the emotion of, I think you just kind of alluded to it, that you would get the text updates when, they're over there in Europe, but how do you balance the emotions of, you have 2 kids that are playing professional golf, and they're both currently right now not on the exact same, haven't progressed the exact same way on the journey. Brooks is won majors. He's older than Chase. Chase is still working his way through the European tour, the Corn Ferry tour. So how does that work for you as a parent, trying to, you got to be supportive. I can't even imagine what that's like, because it's not just one result that you're following 2 results that are kind of in 2 different ends of the spectrum right now.
Yeah. You're happy for one, the success he's had. The other one, you're grinding it out as a parent. I got the opportunity a number of years ago to meet Tony Finau's dad, and Tony has a brother, Gipper.
Yeah,
very talented player, and I saw a lot of parallels. And at the time, Chase was just coming up, turning pro, and Tony was hitting his stride. I think we were, I don't know if we were in New Orleans or at a tournament or somewhere else, but the dad and I sat down to have lunch one day, and I said, "Look, I need to pick your brain a little bit," because I said, "You and I are in similar situations." I said, Tony has progressed through the Corn Ferry Tour and had success and gotten out in the PGA Tour and done quite well, like Brooks. And yet you've got another son, Gipper, who's was probably maybe just as talented, but hasn't had that same success." And I said, "I'm gonna be going through this with Chase turning pro and everything. And I, kind of want to know how you handled this and everything." And he said, "Yeah, it is difficult, because, it happens, I don't want to say easy for one, but, he has immediate success and is able to make that progression, up from Challenge Tour, European Tour to the PGA Tour. How do you deal with this? How do you keep Gipper focused? How do you keep him mentally feeling, good about himself and his game, that he'll have that same opportunity if he just catches a break at the right time or plays well at the right time?" And
yeah,
we, weeks when we got together, we'd always sit at the table and talk. And so, it was interesting to share ideas and things like that, because, as a parent, you just don't find a book and you look it up and say, how do you make your kid a professional golfer? All you can do as a parent, I think, is just one, be honest with your kids, and 2, be consistent and be supportive. And that's kind of what I've tried to do. I was honest with them. If I thought they had an area that was weakness in their game, I wasn't afraid to, point it out to them and say, look, if, you want to win, whether it's a junior tournament or high school or college or whatever, you got to get a little sharper here. You've been lacking at it. And you got another tournament coming up, 2 weeks or whatever, put some time in on it. So I think as long as you're honest with them and consistent and show them that you're there for them, you got to separate being a parent and being their coach.
Right.
They have coaches, and yes, I know the game well enough to be able to help to some degree, but I can maybe help mentally more so than I can, with technique and things like that. And I think that's where you have to identify that. They're going to make mistakes, and the best thing they can do is sometimes you just say, hey, look, now you know what it's like, or, don't make that same mistake again. I'll never forget when they were young. I'd say Brooks was probably 10 and Chase was 6. They played in this little event up at Palm Beach Gardens, and the speaker was Tony Jacklin.
Yeah.
And, the kids are sitting there. They don't know who the heck Tony Jacklin is. They probably may have recognized Jack Nicklaus, but not Tony Jacklin. And he was a great player in his own right. So he got done, and he was standing around. And so I grabbed the 2 boys, and I remember walking them up. And I said, Mr. Jacklin, I said, my name is Bob Koepka. These are my sons, Brooks and Chase. And I said, they both love golf. And I said, someday maybe they'd love to be able to play at a level like you did. And I said, is there one piece of advice that you could give these 2 young men to help them, be successful at golf? And he said, yeah, it's real simple. He said, get the ball rolling as quickly as possible around the greens. And I thought to myself, I understand that a little bit. And, he sat with each one of them for a few minutes and just said, look, don't just pull out that, that sand wedge, or, I don't even know if they had lob wedges at that time.
Right.
And just throw it up in the air, because you don't know if it's going to land on a wet green, it's going to hit and land soft, or, it's going to check or release. And he said, get that ball, do a bump and run, get it on the ground as quick as possible. And because he said, you know what, you don't see many balls fly in the hole, but you see a lot of putts roll in. He said, get that ball rolling like a putt. You'll see some success. And it was just little things like that. As a parent, I could try and put them into people, because every parent thinks that their kid's a problem child because he doesn't listen to them. You're not alone. My kids didn't listen to me either. So you've got to get them around other people that, understand the game, and you just reinforce those things and remind them what this person or that person said. Because, I would get frustrated. My kids I'd go up to the range and they're going, oh yeah, this guy told me get the ball rolling as quick as possible, or this guy told me this, or this guy told me that. I'm like, well, who told you that? And I look over and it's a guy who's a 20 handicap. And I'm sitting thinking, are you kidding me? You'll listen to a guy that's a 20 handicap, and, I'm scratch, and you won't even listen to what I have to say. And I finally said to the kids one time, I said, just remember one thing. There's very few people that have a vested interest in seeing you do well. And don't forget, I'm the main one here.
Yeah.
Okay. As your father, why would I give you bad advice? I'm going to give you the best advice I can give you. May not always be, the proper way, or maybe even the proper way to put it, but I'm going to be very direct and tell you, I'm going to be honest with you. This is what I think, and, let it go from there. And it's interesting. They remember what you say. They just won't always give you credit for it. But you'll hear them tell somebody else the exact same thing, and you're going, they did get it.
Yeah, they did get it. That sounds vaguely familiar. That's funny. What I want to ask, so you have been able to find yourself in some incredible spots, whether it's being in the room while the U.S. Open trophy is being engraved with Brooks's name on it, or being at college tournaments, or following I'm guessing you were there when Brooks and Chase played the Zurich together. So you've been in these different situations, and where you're able to attend these things. And what stands out? I mean, I know it's going to be hard to pick just one, but can you maybe share a story of whether you being at a Ryder Cup or you being at a U.S. Open or a PGA, where you're surrounded by some people, or you're just in this moment that you're just thinking, wow, not only how did they get here, but how did I get here? Just like, this is incredible.
Yeah, I've had a lot of those moments. Sometimes I think to myself, I need to pinch myself because this is a dream.
Yep.
And it's not really happening. But I'd say probably the proudest moment was that first Zurich Classic in New Orleans, where Brooks and Chase got to play together, and didn't know what kind of expectations, and that they were going to be able to, how they were going to perform out there. Brooks was a good player on the PGA Tour, but he might have been ranked, say, 18th, 20th in the world. And Chase was just coming out, as a professional, and played a little bit on the Challenge Tour at the time. I think he played one or two European Tour events. But to see them playing together, was just such a thrill as a father, because, to have one kid playing professional golf, two, the odds are astronomical. And, I was just so proud. And what really hit me was we got out there, and Brooks and Chase said, "We got a press conference." And I was like, "You're kidding me." And I'm saying, why are they going to do a press conference with Brooks and Chase? But apparently it was a big story because two brothers are going to get to play, in the same event together. And, Chase had gotten a sponsor's invite in. And I'll never forget going into that room, and it's just two of them and, the reporter and all these TV cameras. It'll sit in the back. And I literally took my phone and I put it on video, and I videotaped the whole thing. And I probably watched it 4 or 5 times since. And just, listen to the two of them up there laughing, poking a little bit of fun at each other, and, talking about how, what's going to happen, because 2 rounds were best ball and 2 were alternate shot. The comment was like, so what's going to happen when your brother, hits it in the trees or misses a putt, or, doesn't do what you thought he was going to do. And, and they were just laughing like, probably the same as it was, when we were growing up. We probably can't get into fisticuffs out here in front of everybody, but there'll be a few choice words. Just seeing the interaction of the two of them, as adults, just being kids, and getting to witness that as a parent, that was really, really special. And I've been blessed to be able to travel to a lot of places around the world. We spent about a month in Europe traveling around watching Chase play, and some different European Tour events in Switzerland and Denmark and Scotland, and getting to go to places that I probably would have never gone if they weren't up there playing. And same with Brooks, going to the Ryder Cup in France and experiencing that over there, and the Ryder Cup at Whistling Straits, and then going to these majors. I remember making a comment to Rich Lerner when Brooks won his first U.S. Open. I was sitting in front of the TV at my house watching it, and everyone's like, why aren't you up there? And I'm like, I don't want to jinx him. I'm a superstitious, athlete from the past, and he was doing well. Last thing I'd want to do is fly up there and jinx him.
Yeah.
And Rich said to me, so how does it feel? And I said, well, it's surreal, but I said, every year one father gets that special present on Father's Day of seeing their son win the U.S. Open. And I said, this just happens to be my year. And I remember him saying, is this the best Father's Day gift you ever got? And my comment was, until next year. And he kind of laughed when I said that. And not that I, was guaranteeing Brooks was going to win the one the next year, but lo and behold, he did in Shinnecock. And so it made me look like I was Karnak the Magnificent, being able to predict the future. But that was very special. And getting to play with Brooks over in Scotland
I was just about to
at the
ask you.
old course
I
in
know.
St. Andrews.
I was just about to ask you. You played the 2015 Dunhill Links, which is the the 3-course rota of Carnoustie and Kingsbarns and the old course, and Brooks finished second behind Olesen, I believe.
Yeah, Torbjorn.
Yeah, and just that had to have just been an absolute blast. I mean, not just on the golf course, but you're playing in a tour event. You're surrounded by all these other players. You're spending the evenings together. I'm guessing that's got to be the highlight.
Yeah, that was a phenomenal week. I mean, when he told me, he was going to take me over to play in that, and got the approval to bring me over as his amateur partner, I was thrilled. I mean, to be able to play the old course is like, something that you always want to do as a golf fan, and then to get to play it, in the middle of a European tour event is like, wow, and get to do it with your kid. And it was such a special week. I got the opportunity to play with Martin Keimer and his dad, and got to play with Sean O'Hare and his partner, and Stuart Sink and his partner, and so I've gotten to meet some of those guys and watch them right in the heat of battle, and yet you're trying to compete as well, but at the same time stay out of their way. And
sure,
it was just a phenomenal week, and Brooks never lets me forget that he came in runner up and we didn't make the cut. So he's always sure to make sure he can get the dig back in whenever he can. That's just being a Koepka. But I got him pretty good over there, because when Torbjorn won it, I remember being outside the locker room in the building there, and Brooks came up, and we were talking, and Torbjorn came up, and I handed the phone to Brooks, and I said, "Can you do me a favor and take a picture with me and someone that can win the Alfred Dunhill Links?"
Wow.
And so Brooks has got to take the picture with me and Torbjorn, and then I said, "Oh, come on now, step in here, Brooks. We'll get the picture with the champ and the runner-up and everything." So, but and I had gotten Brooks earlier in the week. One of my buddies came over for the weekend. He was doing some work in Switzerland, so he came up and stayed at the house with Brooks and I, and so he got to walk inside the ropes with us, and he always says it was such a thrill. But we were walking up just past the Dunbig, and down the street comes Shane Lowry, and Shane had just won the WGC event up at Firestone.
Yeah.
And so I kind of did the same thing. He sees Brooks and stops and says hello, and Brooks introduces me to Shane, and we're standing around talking, and they introduce him to my buddy. And so I said, "Hey, Brooks, do you mind taking a picture with me and somebody that can win a WGC event?"
Wow.
And, and so I get a picture with Shane, and I ended up hanging with Shane one night at one of the places.
Oh, that sounds like
a smart.
That sounds like a smart. That sounds like a smart idea. Hanging out with Shane Lowry in a pub late at night.
Oh man, we spent 4 hours there, and to tell you what a small world it is. My buddy and I go in there, and it turns out the place is pretty much empty. There's Kevin Phelan, who played at
UNF.
North Florida.
Yep.
Right. And I knew Kevin. And his caddy were there, and Shane was there, and my buddy John Hardy and I. So we're in there, and we're just talking and drinking, one after another, and telling stories and just laughing. And I mean, I bet we spent 4 hours in there. And, we were talking at the time, we were placing bets on some of the matchups over there. And my buddy Hardy and I were trying to make a little extra cash. And so the caddy says to me, "Well, there's a couple of them I can probably help you with." So we're like, "Oh, yeah." And so he gives us a couple of picks and everything. And we were doing pretty good on our own. And he gave us 2 picks, and one of them was looking good, and the other one was, not looking good. And I remember him saying, "Don't worry, this guy always seems to fall off at the end. He kind of seems to collapse and everything."
Oh.
And I think it was like 4 holes to go, and the guy was up by 2, and we ended up winning that bet. But lo and behold, 3 years later, Chase is traveling around on the European tour, and he's got this caddy named Mark. Well, I'm here in the States, so I don't know anything other than, this guy Mark, and don't know what he looks like or anything like that. And So we're over there in Switzerland, Crans, Montana, the Omega Masters. And it's a small little town. If you ever get a chance, you got to go to Crans, Montana. It's absolutely gorgeous. And base birdies 8 of the last 10 holes in the second round to go from outside the cut line to inside the cut line. And we decided we're going to go up to, afterwards, to go up to this place called the Traffic Bar. And it's just a little pub in the town. You could walk from one end to the other. It's like 3 blocks long. So we come off of the 18th hole and we go up there, and I get up there and there's Chase's caddy, Mark, and he's got a glass of wine there. And so I go over and start talking to him a little bit. And, my only conversations before were just, hey, how you doing? Good playing today, or, you had a tough one today, and never really had an extended conversation with him. So we're standing there talking. And I said, it's just really nice to finally meet you. And he said, well, I met you before. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, 3 years ago with Kevin Phelan and Shane Lowry, I stood at Ma Bell's in, a block from Dunvegan. He's like, yeah, I was Kevin Phelan's caddy at the time. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And, I had no idea that I had met him. And, it tells you what a small world it is. And then that's actually, it's kind of, there's another little side note to that. But so we're standing there, I'm talking to Mark, and all of a sudden this one guy comes behind me, and a lot of the players are hanging out there, so you get to know a lot of the players over the years, seeing them in the dining and stuff, and talking to a bunch of them. But this Irish guy comes walking behind me and said, would you boys like a drink? And I said, no, I'm fine. When they served you beer, it was like a 24 ouncer. And of course, you're at such high altitude, it doesn't take much to get you tipsy over there. And Mark's like, yeah, I'll have a glass of wine. And they had like an outside bar, like 15 feet from us. And the guy says, you sure you don't want a drink? And I said, no, I'm fine. And he looks at me and says, I'm not going to ask you again. Can I get you a drink? And of course, he used a couple other adjectives in there. And I said, yeah, give me a drink. So he brings it. So I'm thinking I got to down this one real quick. And I do. And I'm like, Mark, who is this guy? And he said, well, that's Beef Johnson's agent. And I said, oh, really? I said, I like Beef. He's good for the game. He's different. He's not your, run-of-the-mill golfer. He seems to have fun out there and everything. So lo and behold, the guy turns around and hands me my beer and Mark's glass of wine. And I pound down the other one real quick because I didn't want to look, like something was wrong. And with 2 full beers, and I said to the guy, I said, Mark tells me that you know Beef Johnson. He's like, yeah, I do. And he said, would you like to play a round of golf with him? I said, yeah, it'd be great. I'd love it. I said, I'm sure it'd be a fun round. And he says, well, I can make that happen. He says, we just got to put a little wager on it. And I was like, sure, and he said, well, what do you want to wager? So I'm thinking, all right, I got to up it, because I can't do a normal wager. You're not going to want to do 10s and 20s.
Yeah.
And I said, how about $1,000? And the guy starts laughing and says, well, you got to make it worth my while.
Oh, gosh.
And so I said, well, how about 15 grand? And he says, well, you've made it worth my while, but not worth Beef's. So I looked at him and I said, well, how about 150 grand? The guy couldn't get his hand out quick enough to shake my hand to consummate a deal. And I was shaking hands, and I said, what's your name? And he said, Simon, whatever. He says, I'm Beef's agent. He says, what's your name? And I said, Bob Koepka. And he went, ooh.
Uh-huh.
He's like, oh boy, got myself into a good one there.
Yeah.
And next thing I know, guess who comes walking by? John Daly's agent. And we have a similar conversation and everything. And here this past week, John's, comes out in the media and so he's got Brooks calling him Uncle John.
I know. I saw that. I was going to ask you. I'm afraid to ask about that one, but yeah, that's because I was going to ask you, like, when you're out watching, the guys play, whether it's Brooks or Chase, I'm guessing that you're walking most of the way. But I was going to ask you, if you didn't walk and you found yourself stuck in the clubhouse or something, I'm guessing John Daly's someone that you wouldn't mind hanging around with.
Yeah, you know what? He was a riot, and I've always been a fan of John. I mean, just the way he came out at crooked stick as the last guy in the field and wins the PGA, and he's not your you know robo golfer. He kind of does things his own way, and I like when people are different, not just cookie cutter, and so I've always been a fan, and I think like Beef, he's fun. He was good for the game. I mean, you know, um, he's had issues and stuff, which everybody at some time has an issue. So you got to look beyond those things, and just happened to be coming out of the back of the clubhouse, and John's sitting there, and so I just walked over just to say, hey, I'm a big fan. Just wanted to say thanks for what you do. And all of a sudden, Brooks came by on the walkway and saw both of us there, and stopped for a minute. I think he was going to the range. Actually, he wasn't out playing yet. He was going to the range, and so he talked to me for a second, talked to John, and he went over to the range, and so I just sat down with John. He's like, hey, do you want a beer? And, I mean, we sat there and just started talking and telling stories, and I was asking about his son, little John, and we just got to laughing and having a good time, and time just kind of flew by, and all of a sudden I was like, oh crap, he's going to be on the first. I got to get going. So luckily I got out there and got to see him before he teed off and everything. But those are things that I'm blessed to get that opportunity. Because people would kill to be able to get inside the ropes to the clubhouse and get a chance to talk with guys like that. Like Stuart Sink. I had the pleasure of playing with him at St. Over in the Dunhill Links. We played together at Kings Barn, but and I remember, so I was joking with him on the range before we went out to play, and I said, "Hey, you want to have a little match today?" And I said, you and I will play a birdie game, and he's like, sure thing, I remember, Kings Barn. I think I'd made like 3 birdies, and we were back up on this short par 4, and he comes up, and I'm like, so Stu, how many you got today? And he's like, I got 7. I was like, oh crap. He said, how about you? And I said, I got 3. And so when we went over to St. Andrews, we're on it's a small little range, and we're hitting some balls there, and I said to him, you want to carry the match on again today? And he said, sure thing. So we got done, and I'm waiting outside the recording area for Brooks to go in and sign his scorecard. He's in the foursome behind us, and so he comes up, and so I said to him, how many did you make today? And he's like, oh, I got 8, or whatever the number was. He's like, how about you? And I said, I got 3. And I said, how many eagles you got? He's like, none. So I got 1. I got you. And even to this day, I always tease him. I'm like, hey, how many eagles you got?
Oh.
And so I always remind him I'm one up on him there. I never won the birdie match, but I won the eagle match. And and it's just you get to know these guys, and they're just like everybody else. They put their pants on the same way. They just have to be really good at golf,
Right?
And most of them are really good people too. And they remember you, and they're always nice to you. And I've had the pleasure of meeting Stuart's wife, Lisa, I think is her name, and I remember always asking him how she was doing because she was going through some breast cancer treatments. And, I go to a restaurant one night, and there he is with his mom and dad, his whole family, and so I get to meet those guys, and but you keep your time to a minimum. You just go over and hello, nice to see you. I'm a big fan of your son or your husband or whatever it is, and you don't go and sit down and pull up a chair and have dinner with them.
Of course.
So they respect it, and they're like I said, they're just a lot of classy guys out there, and I was really happy when Stewart got the Payne Stewart Award. I thought it was well deserved.
That's great that what you're saying about a lot of the guys are just very approachable, and they sounds like they like seeing you. It sounds like you're a good time to have a beer with, which I know that's the case. I'm gonna go ahead and get you out of here in this question. You've mentioned a lot of things that Brooks and Chase have learned from you. What have you learned from them?
Well, I think I've learned a lot. I've learned how to just be a dad. You know, there's no right or wrong script to being a dad. You just do what you think is right, and as professional golfers, they're going to see a lot more challenges or defeats than they will victories.
Of course.
And so you just got to be there as a dad, and let them know you're proud of them. And so I think I've become a better dad by just staying back and being there to support them from the sidelines, but not getting involved with their daily routine. We go to a tournament. I see them right before the round, tell them good luck. After the round, tell them congratulations, or hey, had a tough one out there, whatever it is. We'll see you out here tomorrow, and hopefully it'll be a better day. And so I think I've learned that over this period. And you learn a lot about yourself because we all make mistakes, and I'm sure there was times that I probably said the wrong things when they were coming up in junior golf and college golf. And so, you learn from those mistakes and try and not make them again. And let them know that you're proud of them. And I think that's what's important. And, that whether they win majors or, like in Chase's case, he had success in the Challenge Tour that one year, got right up to the European Tour, and now he's, out there. He's got conditional status on the Corn Ferry. And, do I worry about him, getting out there and having some success? And it's just like he just needs to play well at the right time, and I know he can do it. He's done well in some different PGA Tour events that he's been in and everything, so I know he's got the game. And it's like a jigsaw puzzle, maybe just one piece missing. And once he can find that piece, I think he'll do well out there. And so you got to stay supportive.
Yeah.
And you can't, what the hardest thing for me is I'll be standing with Chase and someone will come over and say, you got to be so proud of your son. And so many times I look at him and I'm like, yeah, I'm really proud of Chase. And the first comment is, no, I meant Brooks. And, and I could just feel it because, I had an older brother that was a great athlete in all three sports. And I was always compared to him growing up. And, one of the things that I'll never, and I've told my kids this story, I threw a one-hitter in college. One of the first things one of the teammates said to me afterwards was, your brother threw a no-hitter. And, I remember telling him, you got about 10 seconds to get out of my sight before I kick your butt.
Yeah.
Because, what the heck's that have to do with what I just accomplished today? It has nothing to do. And the comparisons are always going to be there from others. And you as a dad have to kind of separate those out so that it doesn't become personal. Because it's very easy for Chase to take that as a personal knock on him. The individual that said it didn't mean it that way, but sometimes they don't understand the environment that they're in. And, so you just have to be there and hopefully, massage that situation to where it's a positive and not a negative.
Well, Bob, this has been fantastic. I mean, just tons of great information and great stories about just your, the journey of getting into the game and bringing the boys along in the game and seeing their successes. And it's just, I think it's just fascinating. I think a lot of the listeners will have enjoyed this episode. So I appreciate you taking the time and let's try and resume that round of golf that we started a year ago.
Yeah, I look forward to it. I do have to remind you of one thing because you mentioned it on the podcast with Chase about the Pop Sykes that we played in.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's my fault. I need to. That's right. I did.
No, that's all right.
I did allow him to talk about it, and yes, you have the floor. You can you can talk about that term as well. You guys both won that, and I think you carried the team, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what I'll tell them to this day. It's amazing. They always have different memories from their perspective, but that was a tournament I always wanted to play in, and it's really a great. I'll call it a local tournament, but it's actually a national tournament.
Yeah, it is.
that gets hosted here in Atlantis, Florida, where I live now. And the timing was always bad because the kids were always playing in some tournament elsewhere. Like they used to have a tournament out in Arizona for all the college All-Americans. And, Brooks would go out there, or, Chase was going there and everything. So never had the timing just right. And I want to say one year Chase wasn't playing in that. And so I convinced him that I said, look, I'm going to enter this tournament. I'm going to put our entry in and everything. I want you to come play with me. And, unfortunately, it's the only year we were able to play. And it's probably one of the more difficult tournaments because it's pure alternate shot for 36 holes. And, one person tees off on the even, the other person tees off on the odd. And, you alternate until you hole out. I remember going into that thing, and, of course, the competitive nature we had, the goal was to win the thing. And, we got paired up with the Litt family the first day, and we played pretty good. I think we shot even par. And the next day we get paired with Ryan Howelson and his father. I think they were, maybe 2 or 3 shots behind us. And, Ryan was a good player. He, played on the PGA Tour a little bit. And, he and his dad, they were a joy to play with, as well as the list. But I remember going in, I told Chase, look, we've got to grind this thing out. And I remember one of my personal goals was no 3 putts, which is really hard to do when you're not putting that often, because you don't want to let your partner down. And we went through that whole tournament without a 3 putt. And I remember teasing Chase because the whole time I was just more worried about, hitting an errant drive and putting them, behind a tree or in the bushes, or, hitting it out of bounds and having him re-tee. And I was fortunate that I didn't do that. We ham and egged it pretty good, and we got through the whole 36 holes without a 3 putt. I think we had like 6 birdies and 6 bogeys to shoot even par and win that thing. And I always teased Chase because he was going to be turning pro later in the summer. That was Christmas of his senior year in college. And so he comes out, his first tournament as a professional is over here in Atlantis. And I've always teased him, and I said, I gave you the momentum with that big win at the Pop Sykes to get you over that hump in your first, professional event. I think he shot the course record 63 there that day and won the minor league tour event. He still won't give me the credit for the momentum, but I'll take it anyways.
There's a lot of going back and forth between these Koepkas. That's the common theme that I'm picking up. But I love the fact that whenever you meet a PGA Tour winner, whether it's Lowry or whether it's Olesen, you ask Brooks to take. I mean, that's balls, man. That's balls. That's great, though.
Yeah, and there's one other one I could tell you about.
Sure.
The first tournament that they're going to play together in Zurich. I'm just so pumped up. We go out for the whole week, and of course we're going to take in Bourbon Street and do all that and everything. So when they were doing the Pro-Am, I'm going to go out and walk around Pro-Am. I mean, what else am I going to do? I'm a golf nut, so yeah. I go out and walk around and everything. And, I'm watching the Pro-Am, and of course, a lot of these guys are playing and aren't really that good at golfers, and they can hit some really bad shots. So just they're successful businessmen, and their company puts them in this thing, and so we're walking around, and I forget the group that Chase and Brooks were playing with, and so we're just walking down the fairways, and we're joking with them, and when they'd hit an errant shot, you kind of bust their chops a little bit. And so we walk around, and, I've been just becoming friendly with these guys and, giving it to them when they needed it and sticking the needle in and everything. And so we get to, we got to finish on 8. And the 9th hole's a par 3 because it did like a shotgun start. And so when I'm shaking hands with them after, the kids had signed golf balls and everything. So the guy's like, well, since you've been giving us crap all day, why don't, let's see what you can do. And they said, we'll play 9 with you. So I was like, sure, no problem. So we go over there and I said, how far is it? I think if I right, it was like 156 yards. So I said, anybody got a 7-iron? And and I said, well, I need a golf ball and a tee. So the other guy hands me a golf ball and a tee, and I hit this shot onto the green, which I was real happy to do, since all the press was on. And I probably hit it hole high, maybe about 20 feet right. And we get up there to the green, and I look, and I got this putt with the pins on a slope and everything, and I got to hit this big bender from right to left and everything. And I said, well, can I borrow the putter? And I knocked the thing in the hole. And it just came up, matter of fact, on Facebook as one of my memories from 3 years ago or whatever it was. And I was laughing about it. So I was pretty tickled. So I take a picture of the two guys, holding 2 fingers up. I just made a birdie and on the par 3. So I was joking with the kids, and I said, hey, I got our team off to a good start. We're 1 under, through 9. So everything, we go out to dinner and we're having fun in town and everything. And then we show up early to the course, and the kids are on the range warming up, and Brooks's agent, Blake, comes over and said, Bob, I have to have a talk with you. And I said, sure, Blake, what's up? And he's like, I can't believe what you did yesterday. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, well, I spent all morning in there talking to the officials not to DQ Brooks and Chase because you came out and played a hole on the golf course. And I was like, Blake, are you serious? I said, those guys, the kids weren't even there. I just was playing with a couple of those guys, that were in the Pro-Am. He's like, yeah, but that's forbidden. And, I'm still not sure whether or not they're going to get in the tournament. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I just screwed up a whole week, all for some innocent thing to hit a shot in there. And then he looks at me and says, I got you. Oh my God, did my heart drop? He had me, and I said, Blake, I'm going to get you one of these days. But still to this day, I remind the kids that, I'm the only one to birdie the 9th hole at DPC.
In New Orleans, nice.
New Orleans, so because they kept parring it or bogeying it. So
that's a
it's just needles like that. We enjoy, giving it to each other, and it's been that way since they were little. And I can remember when both kids beat me when they were 12 years old. It just always had some great memories like that.
You give Brooks any shit about that abomination of a haircut that he got recently, or is it too soon to talk about that one?
Oh no! Actually, I saw him. I stopped up at his house last week. I was up working in the area, and so I stopped in. I had to drop something off for his birthday presents and everything. And he and Jenna we were sitting there in the kitchen just talking and everything. And of course, you could see the remnants of what was left from the haircut and everything. And I looked at him and I just said, I can just tell you one thing, Brooks. I said, you're so lucky you wear a hat to work.
There you go.
And he and Jenna just looked and started laughing. And he's like, yep. And I said, the good news is that thing can grow back. But I said, do me a favor. I said, don't let her cut it again. She said, I think I'm done with my, my haircuts.
That's awesome. This is great. I think we could probably go on for about 3 or 4 more hours, but I appreciate the stories. And we'll get some golf in this summer, and we'll do it again soon.
Yeah, I look forward to it. And it was a lot of fun telling stories about the 2 boys.
And there you have it. Fantastic episode. Thanks so much to Bob Koepka for joining me on this episode here at the Back of the Range. Don't forget, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Every single episode is available on the website, thebackoftherange.com. We'll see you again next week for another episode here at the Back of the Range.